Believe it or not, NXT is failing. Some of you already feel this way and don't even realize it. Let's play a game. Tell me the last basic NXT show, not a takeover, that you enjoyed where everything clicked for you. If you've been watching for a year or two, the answers probably hover around the time where Sami Zayn, Baron Corbin, Samoa Joe as a face, Sasha, Charlotte, the Vaudevillains, all of them were running amok. Not saying you're a Vaude Gimmicks fan or anything like that, but you get my point. NXT has been failing us, and after doing a little bit of research, the reasons were all right in front of my face. Not just the simple bringing in the indies and not making any stars, even though that's going to be covered in this video. Today I have a list of some of the reasons that I'm going to share my opinion on. If you feel I missed some, feel free to comment on them below. I don't know if this falls under objective or subjective tree, so bear with me. Let's tackle this list. This is probably going to be a bit long. Since I've already mentioned the two, let's start with NXT not making any stars. NXT first started as a rebrand or a rebuild after shutting down of FCW, which was a development for WWE. NXT had a pretty bad identity. They went through seasons of a reality-based wrestling show with training obstacles, promo development, and a little paying of the dues. This turned into a complete mess, and while it did breed guys like the Nexus, Brodus Clay, hell, even EC3, there was still some good talent there that could make some noise. Bray Wyatt, Luke Harper, Bo Dallas, Sami Zayn, Big E, Seth Rollins, Tyler Breeze, Neville, Corey Graves, Rusev. On the women's side, Emma, Paige, Summer Rae, Sasha Banks, Charlotte. The list goes on. You get my point. There was some talent still there that could be worked with. While some of those names were pretty fresh, they had a good but not overbearing mix of seasoned guys to learn from. NXT took this time to start developing that newer crop and forming some of those seasoned indies vets into more of a WWE mold to make them roster ready. From time to time, we get dream matchups in NXT such as Cesaro and Zayn, Chris Hero and Cesaro versus CM Punk and Seth Rollins. We got Natty versus Paige, so forth and so on. Guys from the main roster would come down for some matches because of the freedom that they have, and it was a complete treat for the fans. At the same time, it let some of the younger talent gain some experience from the main roster guys. This helped elevate some of those NXT seasoned vets and allowed them to pass on the rub to lesser known NXT talent. This leads me into NXT bringing in indie stars. While NXT was already bringing in indie guys from the start, the intentions and the rate that they were bringing them in are nothing like what they are today. Guys like Zayn, Itami, Neville, Rollins, Harper, Hero, Asuka, and more, they was brought in as big indie names that WWE wanted to mold. Now we have guys like Balor, Joe, Rude, Austin Aries, Eric Young, Nakamura, Joey Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa. NXT wants to build the brand around these guys. Now while all that's fine, you could definitely sell tickets that way, but what exactly does that do for the future of WWE? Whenever NXT needed a big name to come down for matches and or sell tickets for TakeOver, they called on somebody from the main roster for a dream match scenario to fill that void. There's times where guys will come down to NXT because they needed further development, or they were being rebranded with a new character, and that's what NXT was for. Nowadays, guys are on the main roster failing, and when it's time for them to get a new character, they only got house shows to work those angles. Whereas they could have came down to NXT, worked in front of a smaller, loyal crowd, get that character over, and build confidence before coming back to the main roster. Look no further than Tyson Kidd. But you see, those days are over because we got such big names taking up the spotlight, thus making anything seen as developmental become a chore for the fans to sit through. Bringing in such polished names doesn't allow fans to give the development of characters a chance. We have big stars, now we want real results. Man, that must suck for Ty Dillinger. That guy should have been a top guy. Ah well. So, since the arrival of Finn Balor and Samoa Joe, let's look at the names WWE has brought in as homegrown talent and made into stars through NXT. No Way Jose? Ah, I got it. Billy Kay. Liv Morgan? I give up. I got nothing for you. Nothing. Well, that went longer than I expected. Let's tackle lack of push. Yeah, this should be fun. With push comes development, character, and titles. Let's start with development. I kind of touched on this earlier, but there's so much focus on top guys brought into NXT. Homegrown talent don't get the attention that they need to grow as stars. Let's take, for example, though he wasn't homegrown, you'll understand my point, Sami Callihan. Callihan was a very talented wrestler that needed some grooming and some character development. He's a guy that could have put on excellent matches with pretty much anybody, but he failed because he had a character that wasn't relatable, explained, or polished. Callihan left NXT and got promotions out the ass, and now he's making a bigger name for himself in Lucha Underground. He's putting on good matches, and his character and confidence are all coming together. NXT missed the boat with a guy like him because they were too focused on Balor and Joe for nearly a year. Another example is Chris Hero, who left. He made a bigger name for himself, and NXT came crawling back because they needed stars since things were getting stale. One more example I could give, and this is just downright criminal. Apollo Crews. This guy got zero attention whatsoever and was just thrown up to the main roster because of his look. But he didn't get the right development through NXT to even be cared about on the main roster. I hope you guys are getting my point. But let's get back on the topic. Development. There are guys on the roster right now that could be big if nurtured correctly. Cien Almas, Buddy Murphy. You'll laugh, but that's my point. He's actually pretty good. Patrick Clark, Tito Sabatelli, Tucker Knight, Aaliyah, Liv Morgan, Mandy Rose. Alright, okay. The women are iffy, but you can see that there's some talent there. Just green. Again, this is NXT's fault. We have Asuka running around, taking on Mickie James, screaming about there being no competition left. And while this is true, let's look at the culprit. NXT. In all that time of building Sasha, Bayley, and Charlotte, they completely forgot about grooming the other girls to take this place when they left. Sure, you got Alexa and Nia Jax, but both were called up early before getting a chance to fully develop and make some noise before leaving. This is how not spending that time on developing homegrown talent affects the roster. The pickings are slim in the women's wrestling around the world. I pretty much use the women's division as a smaller scale to drive home my point about the men. If the pickings were slim for the men on the indie scene, NXT would be in trouble. Character development. Quick, please explain to me the gimmick of Ember Moon, Liv Morgan, Tito Sabatelli, Patrick Clark, TM61, Cien Almas, Roderick Strong, Sanity. Hell, what exactly is Nakamura's character? NXT gives people we know such as Kenta and Prince Devitt new names and explains them, which helps their character because we know the backstory. But what is an Ember Moon? Why is she dressed like a vampire? Why does she have red eyes and a big ass butt? Why was Big Damo introduced as Damo and now known as, is it Killian Dane? The fuck is that? And Tommy End now known as Aleister Black. I don't make this up. These are the names that they got. This isn't on me. Will these be explained? How about the meaning behind Cash's Oh No? Also, what the fuck is the point of Sanity? Find out on the next episode of Dragon Ball Z. We built up their debut for months. Now they've been on the roster for months, and we still don't know their objective, nor have we made any points in fleshing out their characters. We just know that they're crazy. WWE is a character-driven company, always has been, always will be. It's what sell the tickets. So why the hell do I have so many questions about the characters of NXT? I need some answers. Last part of this topic, titles. With so much time focused on feuds such as Owen vs. Balor, Balor vs. Joe, Joe vs. Nakamura, no time was given to make anyone else feel like the main event. Balor vs. Owens was in July of 2015. That means in a year and a half, NXT has only made 3 main event feuds. Shoot, I don't even count Owens because he had one foot outside the door the whole time as champ. If you don't mind, I like to take a look at the NXT title defenses on TakeOver, and you'll see where things begin to become less interesting. As a matter of fact, not just TakeOver, but the big shows as well. So, let's take a look. TakeOver Arrival, Bo Dallas vs. Neville. TakeOver, Neville vs. Tyson Kidd. TakeOver Fatal 4-Way, Neville vs. Zayn vs. Breeze vs. Tyson Kidd. TakeOver R Evolution, Neville vs. Zayn. TakeOver Revival. Or is it TakeOver Rival? One of the two. Zayn vs. Owens. TakeOver Unstoppable. Zayn vs. Owens. TakeOver Brooklyn. Owens vs. Balor. TakeOver London. Balor vs. Joe. TakeOver Dallas. Balor vs. Joe. TakeOver the End. Balor vs. Joe. I swear I didn't like rerun that. If it sounded the same, that was on me. TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Joe vs. Give me. TakeOver Toronto. Joe vs. Give me. Joe vs. Nakamura in Japan. Joe vs. Nakamura in Australia. Joe vs. Nakamura on a bunch of house shows. Joe vs. Nakamura on a bunch of NXT shows. You get my point. Well, let's look on the women's side. We got the women too. Paige vs. Emma at TakeOver Arrival. And at the regular TakeOver, we got Charlotte vs. Natalya. So already you got different women. TakeOver Fatal 4-Way. Charlotte vs. Bayley. TakeOver R Evolution. Charlotte vs. Sasha Banks. TakeOver Rival. Sasha Banks vs. Charlotte vs. Bayley vs. Becky Lynch. TakeOver Unstoppable. Sasha vs. Becky. TakeOver Brooklyn. Bayley vs. Sasha. TakeOver Respect. Bayley vs. Sasha. TakeOver London. Bayley vs. Nia Jax. TakeOver Dallas. Asuka vs. Bayley. TakeOver the End. Asuka vs. Nia Jax. TakeOver Brooklyn 2. Asuka vs. Bayley. And TakeOver Toronto. Asuka vs. Mickie James. If you can see the pattern, we'll take a look at the women first. After Paige, Emma, and Natty left, NXT went 6 straight pay-per-views with a variation of the same women going for the title. Hell, send away Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky, then you have Bayley in the next 3 out of 4 title matches. Oh my god, and a staggering stat, I just rechecked this. Bayley was in 8 out of 10 straight TakeOver title matches. That is fucking insane. The only one that made it out of there from them that's still on the roster is Asuka. But if you took the time to develop characters in that title picture, Asuka wouldn't be screaming about there not being any competition left. As for the men, this one is quite laughable. 7 straight Big Show title defenses spanning over a full year have been between 3 guys. Nakamura, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe. If you want to count Kevin Owens, make it 19 straight months the title picture containing only 4 guys. How does anyone else get over? How are we supposed to care about the product when these guys either leave or get boring after seeing the same match for 8 straight months? Not even including the house shows. I say all of that to say this. NXT needs a mid-card title. If the same guys are going to be feuding over a title for 8 straight months, what exactly are the other guys doing besides having random matches that we don't care for? Sure, you want the top prize to be the top prize, but no one seems to care when they're having random feuds of their own whose gimmick is they're mad at each other? These guys have nothing to work with here. Gone are the days of Corbin not being able to get the big one, but always fighting to get that title shot. Gone are the days of Sami Zayn not being able to win the big one. No, we don't get any of that because we got Big Name Joe, Big Name Nakamura, and Big Name Balor on the top spot for 12 straight months. Who the fuck grew in this time? Why should we care? Does anyone else want a damn title shot? Give those guys something to fight for in the meantime. A mid-card title. This leads me to predictable outcomes. While NXT is becoming as formulaic as the main roster, the match predictions are becoming, well, predictable. Quick. Who thought Nakamura was going to lose in Japan? Who thought Asuka was going to use to Bayley, Nia Jax, or Mickie James? Who thought Balor was losing to Owens in Japan, or even their rematch? We know when the main title is going to switch hands because the feuds are going to go on for 2 or 3 straight takeovers. So if they have a title match on a regular show, of course we know who's winning. I'd like to close this video with my last reason, and probably my biggest reason of all. The biggest reason NXT is failing is us, myself included. We contributed to the structure that is in place for NXT. Anytime they brought in an indie darling or a seasoned vet, we marked out for it. While we spent that time marking out for those vets, We completely no-sold the guys that were supposed to be getting the development. We made it okay for them to ignore putting in the effort to build those new stars, make meaningful feuds, and prepare the breeding factory for WWE's future. We popped during takeovers and pretty much no-sell the TVs. Remember when we used to live tweet every Wednesday about NXT because we got behind guys we knew nothing about, getting the experience from the Zanes, the Nevilles, the Tyson kids? Remember getting behind guys like Tyler Breeze and watching guys develop into something great like a Baron Corbin? Well, looks like those days are over as WWE NXT has become...
Delete! 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 Delete!